Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast, a weekly show featuring B2B sales leaders and executives. Hosted by five-time CRO John McMahon and Force Management co-founder John Kaplan, the show goes behind the scenes with the people who have been there, done that, and seen the results. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. Revenue Builders is brought to you by Force Management. We help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Find us at forcemanagement.com. Enjoy today's episode.
We're really excited to have you here. We thank you for coming. We just did kind of a pre-prep, and you're talking about, hey, I don't have the number of years experience that most of your listeners have, and we're just setting it straight that that's not why we're having you on. We're having you on because you just did something so bold and so brave on LinkedIn. And actually, being an entrepreneur myself, there were some things in there that I read that were like, holy smokes. I got lucky in a couple of instances, and I remember that pitfall. So we're really excited to have you. And what I wanted to do was just kind of start off by just letting you talk about kind of before you got the itch, before you got the bug. And again, we know you were new in sales, but tell us a little bit about your early kind of career, and then we'll talk about what we want to get into is the meat of what you learned by going to the dark side.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the honor is all mine. I follow you guys for a very long time and went through the Force training and then really loved it. I figured that's when I started following you. And so, yeah, the honor is all mine. So I think the start of the story is when I joined sales. I graduated in...
You know what? I just changed it. I'm not interrupting you, but I just want to change it.
Yeah.
Why did you write the flipping article? That I want to, why did you write that LinkedIn post, the one that drew me and John to your situations? Yeah. Let's start there, and then we'll talk about your early career.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, do you have that feeling when you go through life and you have a chapter that you need to close? And that article was exactly that for me. So I wanted to put, not at the end, but close a chapter to start a new one. And for me, it is a lot easier to put feelings and thoughts on paper by writing. So I wanted to do that before moving on, before closing that chapter. And looking back, I think that was the best decision, because I think I learned more through writing the article than actually living that experience.
Yeah, I think you told us in the prep that I think you said you wrote that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, and then you landed on one. How did you land on one version?
Yeah, especially on LinkedIn, it's very hard to come up with something that's honest, that's transparent. We come across so many articles that's just corporate kind of BS, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to provide an honest feedback of what I went through, and especially talking to founders like myself, like what exactly is the journey of building a company. And it's not all glamour and fun stuff. It gets really hard and really not fun. And I wanted to provide that to really show them what exactly the day-to-day looks like. And the only way to show that is giving a transparent view of my company, of my journey. And I wrote that article really thinking, all right, what does Guilherme from 2022 needs to know before he starts a startup? So yeah.
Really good.
So Guy, it's you touched on it. Is like a lot of times people think I'm going to do a startup, so it's sounds very romantic, and you have visions of grandeur, and then like you said, you jump in, and then reality kind of kicks you in the face, right?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's kind of like a statement, but also a question.
Yeah, there's this quote from, I think, Nassim, in a book about statistics and risk. And if you make an analysis of the successful and the bankrupt, the thing that's common for both is a preference for risks. But the successful ones show up because the failure, you never hear of them. It's a big problem, right? So everyone goes to that really thinking about the successes, but you don't really know about the failures, and there's a lot of them. It's just a matter of we don't have visibility. So putting that out there really, I think, shines a light on that other side, which is really helpful, honestly.
I think,
I think that's why a lot of times people think that someone was lucky, like Elon Musk, oh, he was lucky. What they don't realize, unless they've gone through it, is how much hard work, determination, perseverance, humility, resilience that people like that had to have in order to actually reach their goal. And I think that's what you're referring to, right?
Absolutely. And I also think...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Guy. Sorry.
I also think that luck is a big factor. But if you don't put in a position of getting luck, you won't make it. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So
well, why do you think luck is part of it?
Yeah, I'll give an example actually of my career. I joined Bring in 2021. I was very early in my career, and to this day, I'm very glad that Denise, my VP, accepted me. And honestly, I was not prepared, but I over-delivered. And by luck, that's what I mean. By being at the right time, at the right place. If I didn't join Bring, or if I wasn't sourced by then, I think I would be in a completely different position, in a completely different life, honestly. And I think that's like, it's a conjunction of being prepared and getting luck. I think that's no other word, actually.
Yeah, I think a great way to say it is, I think luck is where preparation meets opportunity. Is really what you're describing. I want to redefine some of the things we talk about today, because I'm a little sensitive around failures. Yeah, failures are things that don't work out the way we had planned. But does that mean that they're a failure? So like, I think about like baseball players, and we got guys, people in the Hall of Fame that, struck out 7 times, hit the ball 3 times. So they're hitting 300% and they're in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And it's the at-bats is really the tone as we go forward. I want to talk about the at-bats and the courage to take the at-bat. And, I've heard people say you fall down 7 times, you get up 8. That's what makes the most successful people in the world. And that's kind of the tone. So now we talked a little bit about, you mentioned Bring, and I think that was a logistics company, and you're just kind of getting started and the right place at the right time. You had a friend that brought you into that company. What did you learn most from that role? What did you like? And then, let's talk about how the itch developed. And when I say the itch, it's like this entrepreneur, this startup itch. Mm-hmm. So what did you learn? And then talk to us a little bit about the timing. Like, did you think you were ready before you were ready? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Just to answer quickly, the answer is no. I wasn't definitely not ready, but I knew it was the time. I knew that in my life, there would be a very small chance to be in the position that I was back when I started. I didn't feel prepared. I knew that it was the right time, so I made the jump. And I think the itch has always been there, and it still is. I have built so many projects in my life since early college, but I never did one where I committed 100%. And that's who I am. I don't know how to be half in and half out. I am either 100% in or I am out. And that's my thought before making the jump. Like I knew that if I want to make the most of it, I needed to go full time. And at the time, just talking about timing, I paid all my debts. I have no kids for the time being. I'm fully independent. I have a lot of savings, and there would be probably no other better time in my life to start a company. So in that way, I was ready, but not aware of the difficulties that would come.
Now, you had a quote in your article that I really loved. Slow success builds character. Fast success builds ego. What did you mean by that? And talk to us about what that meant to you in retrospect of the timing of leaving Bring to start your own thing.
Yeah. What I mean by that is, to put into context, is if you have these stages of successes, you really adapt your life to that. But if you have success too fast, you feel like you are superhuman. You feel like you are the best of the crop, right? You feel like you can do anything. That's great. But if you start a company thinking that everything will go right, or you just need to put on the hard work, it doesn't work. You really need to think about what am I missing? What should I pay more attention to? And now looking back, if I were aware of my weaknesses, I think I would go into a different direction. That's what I mean. I think having had success while at the Bring made me more, I think, optimistic in not a good way, if that makes sense. Yep. Like right now, I'm a cautious optimist. I know that I can do great stuff, but I am also aware of my shortcoming and my weaknesses.
Yeah, I agree with you, Guy. So I remember in like 2000, there was the internet boom, and there were a lot of people that were like instant millionaires and instant billionaires, and they really just were sitting on a powder keg. They never really went through the journey. They never really fought, and they never really built character. Like you said, when you go through the journey and it's really difficult, it instills quality in your character, like perseverance and humility and empathy, and teaches you the value of hard work and how to be resilient. And then because of that, it encourages like many times this deep reflection of, where am I? What am I doing? What do I need to do next? Why am I doing this? Why do I want to keep going? And then you do start to value, especially at the end, a huge appreciation for the journey versus just reaching the destination. And I think listening to you, that's what I take out of it from my experiences in slow success versus overnight success, which, like you said, just builds ego.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a big problem, not a problem, but a good thing is, and also a curse, is I think that at the core of humanity, there's a desire to do great things, a desire to have an effect. And if you are really not appreciating the journey, you really put yourself in a way of hating your life. And yeah, that's 100%.
I agree. I'm trying to learn how to play golf and talk about humility. Like, you get kicked in the head, and then you start to understand, this is not so easy. This is much harder than I thought. I'm not so special. I'm trying really hard and I'm getting knocked on my ass. And you either are going to learn to persevere and enjoy the journey, because if you don't, it's going to be very, very miserable, or you're just going to quit.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you. One thing I wanted to go back on is, just before we ask the last question, you said something. You said, I was unaware of the difficulties that will come. Can you talk a little bit about the difficulties that came your way?
Yeah. So to give more context, I was super prepared in terms of savings, in terms of I have a fiance, and I shared this with her, meaning it will be very hard. I will be working many hours a day. But the thing that I wasn't aware and was my biggest challenge is how unsure the future will look like. Because I could see myself in both of the extremes of the spectrum, like really successful or really bankrupt. That was the only two options that I could see myself, and I really didn't know which one I would end up. And I think that mindset, looking back, is really bad, and I was completely blinded by not knowing that it would happen. If I knew that,
help us a little bit. You got to help us a little bit here, because we're talking about leaving something that you're doing. And when I'm listening to you, I'm like, and I read your story, I'm like, did you have a product this first time? Or did you just have an itch to say, I want to go start up? Like, you didn't own a product the first time, right? You were looking for a founder. You were looking, I can sell. I got energy. I can go create value. Now let's talk about that, brother. Like, that is risky, brother. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, glad that you asked, because that is also one of the problems that I faced, because I didn't have a product. I wanted to go into entrepreneur, but what's their product? What's their company? And I didn't have one. So the first steps I designed like that. The first step is to really meet someone that I would be happy to build a company with. So that's when I joined Antler. And so Antler is a VC fund. So they invite many people to a cohort, and you meet many founders, many experienced people, and you're expected to build a company there. So that was step one. And so, yeah, I think that's just the start of the journey.
Yeah. And then, Guy, just before, you talked a little bit about, I think you were touching on the fear of failure. Like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that can either be an amazing driver to push you to persevere, especially in a startup, or it can be crippling if you're too focused on failing. So is that what you were touching on earlier, the fear of failure?
Yeah. Let me add something. I was later down the road in the entrepreneur journey, I was talking to a friend who was also building a company, and he shared a great article about good pains and bad pains, right? And I think
just translate that really quick. Good pains and bad pains. Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead, bro. I didn't mean to be rude and say translate. No. I just want to make sure they heard that. Okay.
Yeah, I actually didn't say this, but I am Brazilian, so English is a bit hard. But,
no problem, bro.
Okay, so the bad pains is when you are working in something, you don't feel only tired, you also feel out of direction, out of place. You're doing something that's completely wrong. And that's the bad pain. And the good pain is I am tired and it's exhausted, but I am working towards something. And I think I was really tired of thinking about a failure. And so I wanted to put that into perspective on tangible things and really analyzing what I was feeling. And I think at the time I was feeling bad pain. So that's when I made a decision to eventually shut down the company.
Yeah. Guy, so I've experienced this too. I just want to elaborate or add some color to good pain or bad pain. I usually call it like positive energy or negative energy, right? So I feel like when you're working towards something, and I think you talked a little bit about there was a dislocation, so you weren't really working towards where you felt you wanted to be. And then that came up with bad energy. So the bad energy or negative energy starts to make you feel very tired, you know? And then when you're working towards something very positive, you feel this positive energy. And even though you're working 16, 18 hours a day, you come home and you still have energy. You get up the next morning and pop out of bed again at 4 or 5 in the morning because you're so excited. I've had that happen where I was in startups and working 16, 18-hour days, and I still had positive energy. I could still hop out of bed in the morning. Then I would get acquired by a really big company that might be super bureaucratic. And now I wasn't working so hard. I wasn't traveling. I was coming home at 5 o'clock and I had no energy. Like I had to quit. I just couldn't take it. Even though I wasn't working so hard, it was just a negative energy. And that's what you're referring to, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. If there's drivers of energy and drivers of sucking energy, if that makes sense. Like,
yes.
So it's all about, as you mentioned in the beginning, appreciating the journey. And for startups, you feel that way as well. Like if you're building something that we really want to build, that gives you energy. That's a driver.
Yes. So I think we're hitting on something huge here. I'm a big proponent of this as well, John. A couple of things are happening for me in this conversation. First of all, how old are you?
I'm 31 years old.
31 years old, and I talk to people every single day, and you're already owning your story. So John and I talk about it. The most credible people on the planet are the ones that see themselves the same way that others see them. And so they really want to make sure they own their story. Like there's no heroes, there's no victims. It's just a story. And I give you a lot of credit for that at 31 years old. That's amazing. I wasn't owning my story at 31 years old. And now the next thing that we're talking about is this energy. So here we are. We have a young, smart engineer. Give us some advice. Give some people some advice that are, out there. How do you really identify what your energy is? And how did you know? Like one thing I'm blown away with, like if I was your buddy, I'd have been like, wait a second, you don't have a product? There's no product? You're going to go find somebody? Okay, we're going to talk about people in just a second. But I want to talk about this concept that Johnny just brought up on energy. How do you identify realistically, and I'll send it to both of you guys, start with you, Guy. How do you identify the things that give you energy and the things that take energy away from you? Because you should be thinking about that before something starts sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
It's a very hard question, and to this day, I don't have a precise answer to that. But I know of one thing, and that thing is challenges. So doing challenges is really rewarding for me, and it's also the reason why I can't work 50% in a project and 50% in other. I either 100% in or I'm out, because the challenge to go at the time full-time entrepreneur was huge. It was really huge, and that risk was I was honestly afraid, but that gave me so much energy on those couple first months, so much energy that I honestly didn't feel like that I was making a anticipated decision. I felt like I was making the right decision, just by knowing the amount of energy that gave me, like jumping into that challenge. And yeah, that's it.
I like that. Johnny, how about you? What have you done in your life to really identify the things that give you energy versus the things that suck the energy out of you?
Well, I was in the startups. I felt like I was working, towards a goal. I was helping to recruit people, train people, develop people. And we all felt like we had a common mission, a common goal, something that we could all be passionate about. And we were all in the boat and we were all rowing in the same direction. That gave me so much energy. And then when I would get taken over by a big company, I didn't have that passion. I didn't feel like everybody was in the same boat. Everybody was pulling in the same direction. They just wanted to be in meetings and be bureaucrats. They didn't really want to be out selling and recruiting and training and developing and working on a mission. So I have no energy. I just lose my energy. I can't take it.
I think you touched something very important about people, because I felt a lot more energy in my first startup that I built with Alexandra. So, and both Fertably, which was the first company, and Machine, which was the second, the product was at the same stage, but the energy was completely different, because at Fertably, I had Alexandra by my side, so I could share with her like my what I was feeling and the day to day. And as you said, John, about moving into direction as a team and working towards something that gives you so much good energy, right?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you, Guy.
So also, as people are listening to this, I want to just give my 2 cents on this. I think when we're trying to, we think that the energy comes from the goal. My energy actually does come from the goal, but if I'm honest with myself, I got to be excited about the work. And I think people don't really get that. They get like, okay, I get beginning energy from the goal. And you got beginning energy, Guy, from I'm going to go jump off this mountain. And although it's scary, it energizes me. So I'm going to sprint off this mountain. Okay, that's being energetic about the goal. But getting us up every day, I think people miss an opportunity to really analyze the work. And so, for an example, for me, I always look at, before I do one thing to the next, if I'm going to change something, like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to change. So what I like to do is I look at something, I'm saying, okay, what do I like about the work that I'm doing? What do I like about it? What do I not like about the work that I'm doing? Translate, what gives me energy in what I'm doing right now in the work? What doesn't give me energy in the work? And so I just have a big suggestion for people. When you're thinking about making a move, don't underestimate the energy that comes from the work. Because a lot of people go, oh, that's no problem. As long as I'm focused on the goal, I can do anything. I can stand on my head for 5 years. No, you can't. You might be able to, but you're going to pass out.
Cap, I agree with you. There's the goal, there's the work, but for me, it's also the people. It's the people that I'm around. Are they all focused on the same work and the same goal? And are we all passionate about it? And when we're not all passionate about it, I got to go. Time for me to go.
Now, Guy, you talked about patriots and mercenaries. I think you heard me talk about that earlier in my life. Yeah. And you adopted that. It goes right alongside of what Johnny's talking about here. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about 1 or 2 people in here. So people are really important in this equation for you. But talk to us a little bit about this patriots and mercenaries process that you were thinking about.
So before I talk about that, let me tell you about my story with Alexandra. And at that time,
Alexandra is your first co-founder and that was on the first startup that you did, right?
Exactly. Okay, yeah. She was my co-founder. And have you ever met at the time I was really looking out for a co-founder, right? Like really meeting tens of people a day, trying to find someone that matches. And have you ever met someone that just clicks? You get together and all right, so this is the right person. So that was Alexandra. And to this day, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is our time building Fertably. And now going back to the Patriots and Mercenaries, I read the article a couple of years ago and really touched me. And at the time, I didn't make that analysis of myself, like who am I, either in the organization or who am I in my life, right? What project am I committed to? And I made that.
You're asking yourself if you're a patriot or mercenary?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So asking yourself that question gives you so much insight in terms of, am I going the right direction here? At the time, I really like working with Alexandra. but I wasn't fully committed. As you mentioned in the article, I wasn't prepared to go home and burn furniture to create more bullets, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the level of patriotism you need to have while building a startup. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be very hard, and you're most likely to fail. So I noticed that, and I think that, and Alexander is a very honest and transparent person, and I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be transparent, and throughout that journey, I was always sharing with her how I was feeling. That feeling of, am I a mercenary here? What exactly am I looking at? Am I being challenged by the reward system? And I came to the conclusion that I actually was. The reward system was more important to me than actually the process, than actually the company that we were building. And I came to that realization, and I knew that it was time to part ways. And honestly, I'm super happy to have been transparent with her throughout that journey, because I see many co-founders after departing their company, it really feels like a breakup. You don't want to see that person.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about them. And Mia and Alexandra, we are still friends. So she invited me to her birthday, and that says something about both of us.
Hey, Johnny, how many people do you meet where you're going into something and like, I mean, that's a takeaway for me. I don't think I've ever met a successful startup in the beginning, like ground zero, with mercenaries, like people that got together that were like, they're all mercenaries. And Johnny, I'm just wondering if you have any comments on that, because you're big on the people and, you know, the why and the purpose, and any takeaways on that. Have you ever seen mercenaries start something that was successful? I haven't.
No, you see them because sometimes when you're recruiting, you can sense that that's what they're there for. And sometimes they get into.
But I mean, like in a startup, Johnny,
Not
in
in
a
a raw
startup.
startup. No, you don't want them on the team. Yeah.
No.
How do you sense
But
that, John?
why did you feel like you were a mercenary? Why did you feel like you were? Because everything you said up till now was the fact that you wanted to be in a startup. That
Great
you
question.
Yeah.
Now, I was surprised to hear that you felt like you were a mercenary.
Yeah, I think there's one thing. I am the sole provider of my home, so that's me and my wife, and we have our family savings. I wasn't prepared to burn through our family savings and risk. I was prepared to risk my own well-being, but I wasn't prepared to risk my family 100%. And to be honest, I'm not really sure if I was a mercenary or a patriot. I knew that I wasn't prepared to put my family at risk for a company. And that go ahead.
I just call that maturity, bro. I give you a lot of credit. Like, people say that they want to do something. They say, oh, I'm in and I'm all in. And at 31 or 30 years old, you're actually being honest and saying, hey, I want to talk to my partner. I'm not all in. And why I'm not all in is for these reasons. And if we can't be all in, it probably doesn't make sense to continue. And I just think that's really mature. Like, people don't do that.
Exactly.
They just act like they're all in, and then they work on something on the side. And if this fails, at least they got a backup gig or something like that. So I give you a lot of credit for that.
So it sounds like what happened is you went in as a patriot. You went in with a vision. You were passionate about it. For lack of better words, but it happens to all of us, you know, reality kicks us in the face and we start to realize, hey, in order to achieve this goal, if I'm very realistic, even if I'm very optimistic, it's still going to take way longer than I thought it was going to take. And now my reality is, you know, am I going to sacrifice everything, even my family's, you know, savings in order to reach this goal? Or do I need to give it up for something else to protect my family. So it sounds to me like you went in originally as a patriot, and then I wouldn't say you were a mercenary, just like John did, said you weren't. You just came to terms with reality of the situation.
Well, I think what you entered into this equation, Johnny, is time. And Guy, you reflect on that. Like what changes us in that model of patriotism, or let's take that out, all in or not all in, or family or not family, is this concept of time. This was a big takeaway for you on what did you learn about timing?
Yeah. So I shared in the article about timing for startups. Like any startup can be successful given enough time. I think the biggest question is, do you have enough time?
Well,
Like
enough time and enough money.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So for me, I honestly didn't have enough time. I wanted to build
or enough money.
Or enough money as well. But honestly, I think the money part was less important than the time that I was spending while building a company, because I think those years between 30 and 35 for me is honestly, you guys have way more experience on that than I, but that's when you start to build a family and have kids and stuff like that. So you don't have that window of building a family again. So timing for me was a lot more important than the money part. And for the case with the company that I was building with Alexandra, it can be successful, but can be successful in 2 decades or I don't know, many more years. And I wasn't all in on that. I needed something that had not a clear vision, but a path that could be shorter. I didn't care about the outcome. I cared about the time while I was building that company.
Right. So you're not saying that it was necessarily the timing of the startup and whether or not that would be successful. It was your personal timing and whether or not you could make the commitments that you needed to make in order to make the startup successful.
Johnny, how freaking powerful is what you guys just said to each other? Like, how many people are not honest with themselves and saying, okay, I'm going to do this. Doesn't matter how long it takes, I'm going to do it. It's bullcrap. It matters how long it's going to take. And an honest understanding of where I am in my life, what I'm willing to do, what I'm willing to commit, and especially if I have others that I'm responsible for, what am I willing to commit on their behalf? Again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, Guy. I just don't meet a lot of people that talk about that as a reflection at these ages. I think it's really, really powerful. And I think it's a wonderful lesson to impart on people is, okay, we talked about patriotism. Then we talked about people. Then we talked about, product. And then we talked about timing. And so we're learning some criteria here to really some things that you would probably have looked at maybe differently and with a different lens when you make your next decision. Yeah. What happened? We talked about as it relates to, so we talked about the people, talked about the timing.
But the timing also not of the person that wants to be the entrepreneur, but the timing is also of concern. When you first brought up timing, I thought you were going to talk about the timing of whether or not the company could be successful.
Because it was both.
The market, and it turned out we're talking about personal timing. So, but there is the timing of, am I entering the market at the right time? And now there's also my personal timing.
Let's go there, because we didn't talk about that, but we have to, to give people a heads up. What would you do differently, Guy? And then Johnny, I know you deal with this every day. Let's give some people some feedback. How do we analyze okay, I'm willing to go. I'm ready to jump off the mountain. We got product or no product. We got total addressable market, no addressable market. We got problems. We got big problems that people are willing to pay for. Guy, what did you learn? And then Johnny, give us a bow on it.
Yeah. I have a great answer to that, not on the business side, but on the personal side, which is and it's honestly the my biggest takeaway of that year is know what game are you playing and know what winning that game looks like, and is that exactly what you want your life. So I was looking at very successful founders of VC-backed startups, and I looked at them, and there was nothing in their life that I wanted for me.
Yeah.
There were a few things, but their life wasn't something that I wanted for myself. So that gave me a red flag. All right, so I might be playing the wrong game here. So I should be playing a different game. And now I do that analysis in every project that I start. Everything that I start, I try to think of, all right, what game am I playing and what winning this game looks like. And this is something that I think Tim Ferriss mentioned, and it's super useful, useful.
Johnny, for me, I think like timing for the company, like that's in your control. You need to do your homework on the industry, understand the factors driving the industry, the customers, the pains, the technologies that are in the market, the pricing, and the value that you can bring to a company or not bring to a company. I mean, for instance, I'm not going to go open a record store selling vinyl records, CDs, and cassette tapes because that time has passed. But I'm also not going to go try to build a cloud data warehouse unless I think I can have a competitive advantage against companies like Snowflake and Databricks because their timing's wrong. The market competitors are entrenched. Now, I can't do it unless the timing's right. And what's the timing? Usually it's a major shift in technology, like when the internet came along, when cloud came along, now AI is coming along. Is there a new technology that enables me to compete effectively in this market that's already existing, right? What am I really bringing? So timing kind of is in your control with respect to the company itself. If it was like software technology that I'm mostly.
So Guy, go back and talk to your 2021 or what was 2022 self. Hearing that from John McMahon, what did you learn? What would you learn about timing?
So yeah, about timing, especially in business, I think you should look at that. And I want to challenge what you said, John, and really understand, because if you're really building a company that has an innovation product, market research doesn't really make sense because you're building something that's completely new. So if you're analyzing the past, every data that you're collecting, it's not exactly for the product that you're building. So if you're building something that's 100% new in a 100% new market, it will be very hard to compare things. Does that make sense?
And yeah, absolutely. That's, so I did not include that when I was talking about that. So if you're bringing something completely new to the market and it's something that no one's ever bought before, but then it goes back to, do you understand the customers and the pains?
Yeah, Johnny, but keep going there, bro, because timing in that environment's a mother. So now we don't have an educated buyer.
Yes, it's very difficult. Very difficult. So I even remember being there like with Blade Logic. You call up and say, hey, I'm John McMahon from Blade Logic. Oh, well, we already have Blade servers. We don't need any of those. So, and we weren't selling servers. We were selling, software. So then you're on your heels, right? Not only do I have to educate this person in 30 seconds as to what my product does and why it's different than anything else in the market, but what can it do for them and their company and what value can it bring? So I agree with you, Guy. If it's a innovation product, and you believe that you're bringing real value to companies, then your timing could be anytime.
Yeah, but it will be a very hard thing to do, right? Building a company that is in a completely new market is a lot harder than building something that you just improve on, right?
Yeah, it's like you go into an existing market, right? Because if it's something brand new, customers are going to try to pigeonhole you. So you say this, as soon as you say kind of what it is, at least in my experience, they say, oh, it does A. And I go, no, that's not what it is. Oh, it's B. And then you explain a little more. No, it's C. And he said, you go, no, it's none of those things.
And the reason for that is the human brain is conditioned to look for things that it already understands.
Yes, yes.
And it shuts down things. Just a little selling tidbit there. If you're not making your product and services out there relevant to what people already understand, you're going to have a tough go, because their human brain is going to shut down. It's going to resist it. People don't like change. People don't like new things typically.
100%.
So Guy, so you go with no product, you go trying to find a founder, you got, talk to me, bro. Like, would you do it again?
100%. I would do all of it again. I think the things that I learned on that journey has taught me so many things that I wouldn't have learned anywhere else in life or in any other career. So I would make that decision of going full time and really committing to something again any day if given the choice. And especially the people that I met throughout the journey as well. So I have friends from that I still keep up daily, and I think that's something that's really awesome. Sometimes you take that for granted, having a close relationship with someone who shares the same difficulties that you had in life. But it's something that's really good.
I can relate, Johnny. Force management was founded by two best friends. And Harvard Business Schools tells you, don't start a company with your best friend, and don't split the company 50-50. And if Harvard's listening and they want me to come talk to you about like how successful that was, it makes a difference, man. Like, you're not alone. And then when you have somebody where we're so much alike in so many ways, but we're so different in so many ways that balance out. But we didn't just figure that out like, we'll figure that out. We knew exactly what our strengths and weaknesses were and how we complemented each other and how we looked at things from a long-term perspective and what gave us energy. So I know you both have hit on that from a people perspective. And if you don't have a product and all you got is people, you better be getting that right.
Yeah. I think what Guy also touches on is interesting is when you go through these journeys and we talk about building character, it's not that character you build is not confined to business. That character you build extends into your life and all the personal relationships that you have around you. So I think it's something that's very powerful.
It's also so adjacent to sales as well, because many skills that I have developed in my sales career, I used in my entrepreneur year, and I use also in my life, like knowing to have a deep conversation and knowing to listen. And even that, what we just touched on about listening to ourselves and what are our incentives is something that's super related to sales, but also in life. You can really make a lot of use of that in your life.
Yeah. If you had to look back, Guy, and say what were one or two or even three of the biggest character traits that you developed through this experience, what would you say?
I think first and top of most is being a rational optimist. Like, I hope for the best, but I'm prepared for the worst. And I think that's one. And that comes through resilience. Like, if you are a resilient person, I think that's one common great trait of people like that. And I think that's the biggest trait that I got from that experience is being optimistic, rational, optimistic.
Yeah. One other thing that we haven't touched on, I'd like to kind of wrap us up around these points. One of the things, Guy,
before you wrap, can I just ask?
I'm not going to wrap yet.
Rational.
I'm not going to wrap yet. So
I hear rational optimist is, I try not to let my emotions get in the way of some of these business decisions. That's what I really hear you
100%.
saying. Is that true, Guy?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's exactly it.
So powerful the way you put it, but that's what I felt. Yeah.
It's being,
That's really powerful in business.
yeah, it's being aware of where you are today, but really building a future that you really like, really building your own journey, but being aware of where you really are and your current situation.
One
I'm
of
going
the
to add
things
one
that you
for
talk,
you, Dee, that you didn't mention two when I asked you for maybe even three. I'm going to add humility. It's definitely there. So
yeah.
I can see
Glad
it
to
and
hear it.
I can hear it. So
The last thing we didn't touch on that I want to touch on, because knowing when to say when. So life happens, not how do you move on, not when do you move on, but how do you move on? And I think that's kind of how you came to us in today, is how you're moving on is like so powerful. Do you have any kind of thoughts for us on how do you know when it's when? You know, we talked about you get the itch and you go. How do you know when it's when to move on?
That was a very hard decision to make, to move on off being an entrepreneur and go back to work, actually, because most of ex founders doesn't mention it, but what happened to them? Like, we have so many, like 99% of startups fails. Where are the founders? We don't hear about them. So I wanted to share this because I am actually working right now and super happy doing it. I'm super happy. I feel again challenged, as I didn't feel in the last few months before shutting down the company. And I think that's good, because in life, if you're really not enjoying it, what's the reason? I think you need at least something that gives you, as we are discussing, that energy. It doesn't really matter. I really don't care about what other people think. If I need to go back to work, I go back to work. I have a family to provide, and that's it. I think that that's the path forward. And honestly, I'm super happy by having made the decision. And I only made it because I was aware that the path I was going on wouldn't end in a good way. Wouldn't end in a good way. I knew that it was a time to make that decision, and how I made it. It was by what I discussed previously about good pains and bad pains. Really, what exactly am I feeling right now? Is this something that is good enough for me to continue, or is this the time to make a hard decision? And then every year I have what I call like a title for the year, and that year of being an entrepreneur was making hard decisions, like going full time, shut down the company. And so I think on that, I really accomplished the goals of the year.
yeah.
You know what I love is some of these quotes that didn't come up, but I just want to give you credit for them because they're awesome. Forget about all the never give up crap. This is a quote in your article. And this one hit me big time, because I'm like, you get down knocked 7 times, you get up 8. And I just thought about what you said. Better to know you are bad for a season than pretending that you are good for a life. Dude, that you're 31, bro. I'm 61. That ripped my face off when I read that. That was legit. No regrets. What if? Question mark is as much a worst nightmare than trying and failing. So having to deal with what if. And then the last one, the Marcus Aurelius quote that I've used and has been used in my life many times: what stands in the way becomes the way. And holy smokes, man. Like, I'm shocked. I thought I was going to be beating a 60-year-old entrepreneur, and it's a 31-year-old guy. You got a lot of wisdom, bro. Got a lot of wisdom.
Thank you. And honestly, I read those quotes throughout my life, and it was very applicable at the moment. But the Marcus Aurelius quote, I was rereading the book Meditations a few months before shutting down the company, and it made such a great impact on my life, that quote, that when I reread it, I knew that what I was going through was only a small part of the journey, and it's just something that stands in the way. So that will become the way. I shouldn't be worried or afraid of it. Just move on. Life continues. And what you mentioned about being bad for a season, right? I see many founders really having a mediocre life.
Yeah.
Mediocre life, while building a company that's a zombie. It doesn't grow, doesn't break, but that's mediocrity. You really build something great, or you shut down. And that's my biggest fear in my life, to be mediocre. Is that a word? Did I say that right?
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Johnny,
that's
I'm going to wrap up with something, but I want you to be able to do your wrap up, and I'm going to wrap up with a gift to Guy, and it's a quote that I'd like to share back to you to give you some spirit. So Johnny, I'll let you wrap up here.
Hey, Guy, there's a lot of lessons learned here, and it was really big for you to share them, when a lot of people just want to walk away from them and say that there wasn't anything that they really learned, or they make excuses for what really happened. So I have to give you, as we'd say sometimes, big props for for what you've done and joining us and sharing your story and all the character that you built along the way. So there's always a positive. So congratulations. Thank you.
Out and Guy, I'd like to just share this with you and we're gonna post the LinkedIn, because this conversation doesn't even do it service. Like the way you poured out your humility on that LinkedIn post, we'll make sure that we put a link to it. I'd ask everybody, do yourself a favor and read it. So I want to read you something here. It's called The Man in the Mirror. It was written by Teddy Roosevelt. And if you remember, Guy, this is how I introduced myself to you. Is I posted that. I reposted your LinkedIn thing, and I put this as my intro. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the men and women who are actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he or she fails, at least they fail while daring greatly, so that his or her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And I'm really saying that to you, brother. I give you a lot of credit. I know you're going to do great things. We're going to have you on in a couple of years. We're going to find out, where your journey took you. But thanks for sharing your story with us. And I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of it. Well done, bro.
Yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. I'm super happy to be here and honestly very honored. I really can't put into words my gratitude. So thank you very much, John.
You're welcome. And thank you all for listening to Revenue Builders.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check us out at forcemanagement.com.